Hi, welcome to the show. Today I have with me a retired Brigadier General. I think most of you already know who I'm talking about. I have with us today our city manager, Martha Meeker. Welcome, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks, Ken, and I really appreciate you letting me be on the show.
Well, I've read over your job description and I see the breadth and the depth of what you manage, and I feel like I should let you go right now because there's a lot you should be doing. But thank you for being here. Let's back up a little bit. Yes, you're a city manager and you're a retired Brigadier General. Let's talk about that from the Air Force, right? Mm-hmm. Why Air Force, first of all?
Well, I was going to actually teach, and I actually went and did my student teaching. I got certified for 6 through 12. But at the same time, while I was getting my degree at Eastern Illinois University, they brought on computer science for the first time. And so I thought, well, if there's a couple more classes, I could get 2 degrees, and 2 degrees must be better than 1 degree. So I pursued that path as well. And the last thing I had to do for my computer science degree was do an internship. And so I followed my favorite math instructor out to NASA Langley in Virginia over the summertime. And you know, I'm a kid, grew up in a town of 100. My high school was the only high school in the entire county, and big Star Trek fan. Oh, huge Star Trek fan. And so you go in to the gates at NASA Langley, and the individual who was going to be my mentor, you know, he picked me up and he's giving me the tour of NASA Langley, and he's going, you know, over here on this side we're doing wind tunneling for scramjet engines. Over here, we're building a piece of the space station, and it didn't take very much, you know, convincing or a whole lot of time for me to go, this is just cool.
Yeah.
And so I kind of put, well, not kind of, I put the teaching decision on the back burner, and I ended up going to the lead for the interns was Dr. Philip Drummond over there, and I'm like, how could I do this full time? And he said, well, you know, we could probably, our feeder school, Stanford, but you're going to need to get your master's. And really, if you look at all these folks around here, they've got doctorates. And so probably need to get your doctorate. Now, I'm on the cusp of 16 years of continuous education.
Yeah.
And I see the light. And so I'm like, how long does it take to get a doctorate? And he goes, well, 6 years, 7 years, somewhere in there. And I'm like, oh. Okay, well, how about the folks over here in the blue shirts? Because there seems to be a lot of these Air Force people here.
Yeah.
How long does it take to be one of them? And he goes, well, I don't know specifically, but I've heard somewhere around 12 weeks if you go to their officer training school. So, being young and naive, you know, 12 weeks, 6 years, you know, which one are you going to take? I took the 12 weeks, and so that's how I got in the Air Force. Had a great time. They let me do computer programming for a satellite system right off the bat. And that was exciting for me. The very first time, you know, you step out onto this darkened floor and the computers are humming in the background, and it just was exciting. And then, you know, being still young, there was a couple of lieutenants with me, and we all decided that, well, you know, the Air Force is good, but if we're going to stay in the Air Force, we should fly.
Uh-huh.
And so we all applied together, and they let all 3 of us go off to Navigator School. And so I had a great time doing that, and I just had so many excellent assignments along the way. And they've been, you know, a lot of luck, a lot of hard work, and they let me, you know, continue to take jobs with more responsibility and you know, kind of a broader grasp, which I think has helped me a lot because, you know, the Air Force is 320-some thousand people. And the military in general is over 1.5 million. And so when you're doing big programs and those within that number of people, you kind of learn how to work as a team and as a group. And so I think that's been really helpful. My time at the Pentagon has been really helpful because I got a chance to do a lot with congressional staffers. And it's amazing when you're trying to buy airplanes that are $220 million a pop. Congress really is interested in having, you know, a say in that. So it was great to work with the congressional staffers, and that really got me an appreciation for, you know, the civilian-led government on a very firsthand experience. And then I got a chance to go down to Charleston, South Carolina, and be an installation commander, and
now,
that was fun.
That's when you were promoted to Brigadier General.
Now I was still a colonel.
Okay.
Still a colonel, but that's where I got my introduction to what I would call it's our equivalent of city manager. you know, I had fire, I had police, I had to keep the streets up. It was a little different though, because I also, I ran the restaurant, I ran the golf course, I ran the bowling alley, you know, I had churches I ran. It was just an interesting dynamic. But after that, then I went to go be the special assistant for the highest military commander in NATO, and that's where I was a Brigadier General at.
Military assistant.
That's why I made that.
And somewhere along the way, flew some combat support missions in Kosovo.
In Kosovo and some other areas, that was when I was flying AWACS, which is that big airplane with the dome on it. I also did some previous combat support when, back when it was the Cold War, was hot and heavy. We used to, and even a little bit afterwards, we used to always have an airplane in the sky that could launch nuclear weapons. So that was my airplane.
Serious business. Wow. All right, so you've come to the end of a 28-year career in the military. You look back and you think, what are some high points? What are some low points?
Oh.
What'd you learn?
Well, I really enjoyed the Pentagon. Some folks, it's a complex battle, but I did requirements for acquiring weapon systems. I had special ops, heavy mobility aircraft, and helos in my portfolio. All of those, you know, the current operations in the war clearly showed the need for all of those. And so it was very satisfying working with congressional staffers, your Army patrons, your Marines, because you're in service a lot to your other service members because you're flying them in, you're flying their cargo in, you know, special ops, you're doing their gunships for them, you're doing their refuelers for them. So just getting to know the breadth and getting to know the relationships and working inside those relationships was a lot of fun.
Wow. Well, I get a much better idea of why you are city manager now. I think a lot of people thought, military, general, well, that's an interesting step. Maybe not seeing the parallels, but I think you've let us know why exactly that McMinnville, over and over I've heard, we are so lucky to have her. So
well, it's good to know that all those $20 I'm passing around to everybody's paying off.
it is, it must be, but I haven't gotten mine yet. So we were lucky to have you. Why did you choose us?
Well,
why do you like us?
Well, you know, I will say this, it was by blind, dumb luck. When I retired, you know, the Air Force does a great job helping you retire, and they sit you down and they're going, you know, there's going to be two things that will shape where you retire. And it's either going to be you're going to retire where you can get a job, or you're going to retire because you have a location in mind. In my particular case, it was location, because back in 2008, when home prices were drastically declining, I decided that, you know, it's probably a good time to buy that retirement property. And after looking a long time, I mean, I thought it was going to be Denver until I realized that I don't make near enough money to retire in Denver.
Yeah, you're used to looking, you looked at the whole country.
I looked at
You've
Denver,
moved around the
I
whole
went
country,
to
right?
Casper, Wyoming, I went to Kalispell, Montana, over to Spokane, Washington, and then I hit the Bend area. And the Bend area, and then why I chose Sisters particularly is there was a large piece of property that opened up at the right price. So I ended up, in a nutshell, I ended up that Oregon was going to be where, you know, I'm going to live at until I die.
So that's the location
That's
part.
the location. And then I started looking at what kind of jobs I wanted to do. And a lot of my cohorts in crime, you know, they end up going to work with Lockheed and being vice president of, you know, Middle East affairs and stuff like that. I thought about that. I made a few phone calls, and my heart was just not in it. I just didn't want to go sell hardware, you know, very expensive hardware to people I previously worked with. That just didn't sit right. And I wanted to stay in public service. I really thought that I would be in a nonprofit. That's what my first was. Corvallis was looking for an executive director for Southern Oregon for Goodwill. I actually thought that was kind of attractive, but it got me looking in the area. And of all the things that the Air Force did, they do a great job helping general officers transition. And one of the minor things was they'll put in your job skills in some of the database searches. And, you know, when people add new jobs, the computer runs a match, and if a big enough percentage of your skills matches what they're looking for, they'll send you an email. And of all the things that popped up was a I got an email for the Oregon State Fair Director. And I'm like, I could retire and run away to the circus. Wouldn't that be a hoot? And so I actually clicked on the job. I was thinking about applying for it. But when I got to the job site, there was the main one, but like many internet sites, they had advertising on the side. And so there was additional executive skill positions that folks were looking for. And one of them was the Ben's city manager was looking for an HR director. Now the HR director didn't attract me at all, but it did make me go, city manager. What's a city manager?
This is a circuitous route.
It's a very circuitous route. I looked at what a city manager was, and I'm like, that's an installation commander, but I don't have to run the golf course per se. And the more I thought about it, the more the ability to get back into service and actually do it at the grassroots level was very attractive.
Yeah.
And
Well, we've got grassroots here.
it's fantastic. And McMinnville was the first one that I interviewed with.
Really?
And I appreciate the council to no end in this entire town because they let somebody come in, an outsider, that's a big thing. And then two, somebody who didn't necessarily have the traditional city manager portfolio resume to come in and to join this great community. Fantastic, and it's been a hoot ever since.
Well, you must have given a great presentation. I think from what we've seen so far, we know why you got the job. Well, I'm grateful. I wanted to ask a little bit about, as you transitioned into this, what surprised you?
Well, one, being a senior leader in the Air Force, you travel around and basically for the last 28 years, I've moved about every 2 years. And when you get in the senior ranks, community relations becomes a really big part. So senior leaders spend a lot of time out in their community talking and doing those kind of things. And there's always, you come to a new place, and there's always those one or two guys that want to take you off to the side at a social event and go, oh man, this is so dorked up. You've got to really fix that. And that has not happened once. Not once. Just to the contrary, folks have come up to a T and said, McMinnville, great place to live. The community involvement here is fantastic. 1,900, community volunteers somewhere spread out throughout, the whole of last year. We would like to work to make us better, and I want to help you on that. Where can I help you? To a T. So that's been the community involvement you have here is probably the most surprising for somebody who's not an Oregonian to come in and see.
And you were it was a different model that our counselors and our mayor are not paid.
They're volunteers.
Yeah.
When I was a installation commander out at Charleston, South Carolina, I worked with the mayor. The mayor was a full-time person, and he put in a lot of hours, and so I absolutely no problem with him getting a paycheck. Then I got out here, and the number of hours the city councilor and the mayor are putting in, and they receive no compensation other than the fact they know they're doing a good job. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Wow, that's why I asked, why do you like us? Because I knew you'd give us good reasons to like ourselves, so thank you. I think one thing that makes you glad you took this job is Rose Lorenzen.
Oh, hands down.
Yes.
The whole staff. Kent Taylor left me set up for success. I mean, I would actually have to come in the morning and try to fail because I've got the best staff. Rose has been with the city forever, does HR, administrative assistant, city recorder. Basically she is, the rock solid in the city hall there. The department heads to a T, Mike Bissett, Doug Montgomery, Marcia Bergery has done fantastic work at getting me through the budget. Jenny Berg, the library's doing fantastic. Jay is over there with Parks and Rec, and we're just getting ready to open up a new park. He's been absolutely fantastic. Everybody, Murray Paulo's there, is doing our information systems. So Matt Scales, brand new police chief, doing fantastic work. Rich Leifert over there, fire department is on fire. Those guys do good work. So like I said, it's a pleasure to be there right now.
Well, I was just creating the flow chart in my mind there. Here's Martha, and then these departments kept moving out. The next line kept getting wider and wider and wider, and maybe there's roads and water and light and...
Oh, and, yeah, attorney with Candace there. Lots of folks there to help me out.
So you are responsible. Let's just get to some. I've got your job description right
Okay.
here, and it's 3 pages, and it's a little overwhelming, frankly. So yeah, let's talk about budget. So here you come in. It's your job to have each department present to you a budget. You talk with them about that. You learn about what their needs are, and then you have then it's yours. I mean, you take it to the city council, and now it's your budget.
Yep.
Because it's gone. And so, how did that process go? What happened when you gave it to the city council?
Well, it went pretty well. Fortunately, the city council, there's an advantage when you have a city council that is as stable as what we have right now. There's a lot of experience. So, only Councilor Drabkin is going through her first budget, but she's been a longtime member of the Planning Commission. So they know budgeting, so that helps tremendously. Also, I'm pretty good with budget. That's anytime you get to be you don't get to be a senior leader without knowing the financial part of any organization. That budget is always the key engine that oftentimes, along with people, make things go.
So that was another one of your experience strengths coming from your background.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the budget, and I will admit, I think the best part was the transportation bond hit, and that made us get really smart really fast as a finance team, because we had to go to Moody's. We had to brief Moody's on the finances of the city so we could get our credit rating reaffirmed. You go out and you actually get with the bonds attorneys and the litigators to set up the bond purchase. And so that was, and it just bonded the whole finance team and myself together.
And that presentation to Moody's was your responsibility?
It was.
You made that presentation?
Oh, well, with a lot of help, a lot of help. But it's just one of the fun things you get to do. And the financial piece, it is voluminous. I mean, there's, 390 some pages of budget material, but it's rolled up in a systematic where it comes from the ground up, and then we vet and we scrub and we meet as a management team and we scrub some more, and then we meet again, and through that process, that 6-month project, you end up with a pretty good project. So.
I think it takes some time sometimes when a citizen comes in and there's concern that there's waste in government.
Oh, yeah.
That it takes some time to have an education take place where we really have already switched to LED lighting, or we're on that. We have cut this down bare bones. If we cut it any more, we'll probably lose some spirit. Yeah. In what we're doing, and then we'll start to decay if we cut this anymore. I think that's a process that I've seen in my learning about government and looking at budgets of small towns, Yamhill, Carlton, that there are people like yourself, like you said, scrubbing. These are lean times, and the budget's about as lean as it can be. Would you confer?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's exactly to assess it.
Yeah, and sometimes citizens are thinking, well, there's waste. There's maybe somewhere else there's waste, but here in town, that's your job to make sure there's not. And if they think there is, they could come talk to you about that.
You betcha. You betcha.
Okay, let's get to another one of your duties here. That reminds me. Let's see. Responds to citizens' inquiries and resolves complaints.
You bet.
How are you doing with the complaints?
You get a few of them, but generally, like I said, you can talk almost anything out. For example, we just had some folks call in about this last week on our parks where it says no guns in the park. And they brought up, hey, that's Oregon state law. We disagree with you being able to put that on your sign. And so we dug into Oregon state law, and then we went over it with them. And so we'll make a change that says no loaded guns, because that is the specific language. So, but once again, talking it through, and I think everybody agrees that that's not a bad language. So we agreed that we'll put no loaded guns per Oregon state law. And that's a simple thing to do.
Well, that is great. That is great. Follow through to ensure satisfactory resolution. So, okay, good. Here's another one that interested me. Works with various citizens and business groups to encourage and develop economic opportunities. So in addition to doing the budget and keeping all departments with good personnel and taking care of all the complaints, your job is to encourage and develop economic opportunities. So have you had time for that yet?
There's a lot of good partners out there.
Okay.
We're getting ready at the airport. I got a little bit of a pull toward the airport, as you might imagine.
Okay.
And so we're getting very close to let out a request for proposal for a new fixed base operator, which runs the gas station and those kind of things out there. With a little bit of a combination of a twist, because we would like to get some more economic development out there. So we've worked with Jody Christensen, who actually happens to be not only the McMinnville Economic Partner for Partnerships there, but she also is the chair of the Airport Commission. So that combination of MEDP and being with our Airport Commission, that helps a lot. So making sure that we get now this new entity at the airport to come in and help us further the economic development there. You know, on where can we develop hangar space? Where can we reach out and perhaps market the airport more aggressively? I think those folks in Aurora have done, we're comparable sized airports. Matter of fact, we're a little bit even bigger, but I believe Aurora has done a much better job at utilizing what they had. Now, they do have I-5 right next door, so that's an economic and intermodal setup that we don't have.
Okay.
But I still think we can do some more at the airport, so we're working that. Urban renewal is going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, that's a big word. Well, bring that down to where? Which block? What building?
Okay, so urban
How's that?
renewal, you can kind of think of the downtown area, and now we're
Okay.
going to spread it out kind of
right.
into the granary district, if you want to kind of lump it that way.
Okay, yes.
And the intent is to allow the tax dollars to a certain point that are collected from the businesses here out there on 3rd Street and going up into Alpine, and then to reinvest those dollars back into making that particular area even more attractive. We're in the 2nd year of that, and it's slow right now, and it's supposed to be. Urban renewal has been done in other cities, not new, but as we look toward the future coming up here in maybe year 3, 4, 5, we're working right now on driving down to what's going to be the strategic priorities of how are we going to develop. We've got the transportation bond will help because it's going to develop about 1/3 of Alpine Street, which is in the Granary District. But there still does urban renewal buy buildings that don't fit the motif of what they want the area to develop into? Is it buying some of the older, maybe abandoned buildings and putting them so you have available space? One of the best ways to attract businesses is to say, move on in, I have available space. Is that something we should do? Do we continue working on Alpine to make the road infrastructure the best? How do we phase urban renewal? And that's what we're going to start here this next year, is a really more detailed, once we get to a point where we can issue a bond for urban renewal, what's going to be the targets? What's going to be priority 1, 2, and 3?
That's exciting. I know that Joe Dancer and Kent Taylor have left incredible legacies as our past city managers, and I see good things coming. That's a great opportunity. I'm glad to hear that. Maybe you could share with us, is there a concern you have? You've looked around the city, is there a concern you have, something you're not sure how that's going to work out, something you're focusing on, you're kind of rallying troops around a particular problem?
I think biggest one is, McMinnville, the community interest, the community involvement is probably reflective that, we're about a town of just, recently over 30,000. So a little bit of a small town feel. But, we're growing out of that. We've lost our rural designation. Now, as we grow, and how do you keep that level of community involvement? How do you keep that McMinnville way? And so making sure that we stay with that one simple, central tenet of respectfully deal with each other, no matter what the positions are, make sure that it's done respectfully, and make sure that, you honor that the other person does bring something to the table. If you can do those two, that'll help in any communications we do. And then there's also, as you grow to be a bigger city, when is that right time? We focus very heavily on business, just like we talked about. There will be some point, I believe, when a city becomes big enough that traditional things that maybe the county used to do on the social issues, that now perhaps the city needs to become more involved in. I think we're seeing a little bit of that on the discussion on the homeless. What is the city's, what is the responsibility? Where does the responsibility lay out and, enhance and synergize with those of maybe religious and non-religious nonprofits? And then where do we sink in with the community who has traditionally been, they own the plan to end homelessness for Yamhill County? Where do we sink in on that? And that we're really having a lot of good discussions on that. We've had, I think, 3 council sessions, and then I mediated a session where we brought in a commissioner that's been very active in Lane County. We brought in a representative from Oregon's Community and Health Services, and we brought in our Housing Authority as well as the YCAP Executive Director, and had a panel along with Rick Middleton, who is a citizen that's actively engaged in gospel rescue. And so we've been doing a lot of things to, first educate, because it's amazing. There's a lot out there, and so trying to figure out what is factual and what has, because it's a very emotional event, so sometimes facts bleed into maybe exaggerations, facts. We want to know what ground truth is, what the need is, and then what works best. There's a lot of things out there, I've heard, well, why don't you try Salt Lake's method? Or how about we try Opportunity Village in Eugene? Well, how about Dignity Village in Portland? It's one of those, we need more depth than just throw out, hey, why don't you try this?
Yeah.
You've got to really skin it down to who are you trying to help, and then are the services that you're putting in place really going to make a need? And there was a great article, actually it was a 10-part article in the Oregonian on Portland's effort on to solve homelessness.
I read a number of those.
And the first one came up, and it was very painfully
A
clear.
lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of time, and no
nothing.
progress.
And no progress.
Yeah.
So the council is very wary. They want to make sure that there's a lot of goodwill and a lot of momentum building behind this. We can squander that momentum very quickly if we apply it in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of discussion going on, not only at the council session, but I know there's community groups that are also engaged. We've got folks from, like I said, the nonprofits, whether they be religious or non-religious. There's other folks that are talking about what can we do to help as well, whether it be money, funds, or time. And I think come here in September, we'll probably bring everybody together. That's about the right time to let things bubble and continue to marinate.
All right.
But we need to get on it, because September is about my comfort level for letting it go as late as possible, because winter's coming, and that's the neediest time to do something with the homeless. We've had a little bit of it's been bubbling for a few years. If you look back, there's been other sessions on homelessness from year in, year out. The one thing we really want to do is continue. First part was CWISH stood up, the cold weather shelter program, that stood up. Okay, so now let's make the next step. Let's make the next journey, the next step on solving. I don't think we'll ever solve it. I think there's probably been homelessness since back, when God was a child. But let's make it better. And so we got to do that by September, because cold weather, November, December, we need to have something in place by November, December.
Well, I think we've run out of time. I am so impressed. I went through your job description, asked you questions on everything I could think of. I haven't stumped you. I don't see a chink in your armor. You must have had a growth area, but we don't have time to talk about it now. Just congratulations on coming here and doing such a great job, and just delighted to have you, that you're here, and thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Ken, and thanks to all your production crew here, because I know these guys are all volunteers as well.
They are great. They are great. All right. That's it for the show. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.